Hey everyone, welcome back to Soul Pod. I'm Stacy. Hey, today I want to talk about one of the greatest wells of strength I've ever found, and maybe the greatest well of strength in the world. Is that an overstatement? You decide. So what we're talking about is the idea of sitting silently. This concept of spending time in silent reflection or prayer or meditation. It's a fascinating thing because you see, for more than 3,000 years, maybe longer than that, as far as we're aware of, because of the written word, people have been talking about this thing. Um, Different philosophies, religions have this concept of being silent with yourself and finding the inner voice, the muse, the deeper part of ourselves, connection with the divine. It's fascinating to me. It's fascinating to me because it's philosophies. Stoic philosophy, not a religion, it's philosophy. They talk about silently sitting. Marcus Aurelius said, nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his soul. Nowhere can a man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his soul or her soul. It was, guy centric back then. It's 3,000 years ago, ladies. It's amazing because it's not just a religious concept, it is a philosophical concept as well. But I mean, religions, Buddhism, Sufism, Christianity, um, even Judaism, the Kabbalah has a concept about it's devakut or devakut, depending on who you're talking to, the pronunciation of it. And it's about sitting silently and finding that connection through prayer or concentration or contemplation, that connection with a higher power. And of course, we have prayer in the Christian faith. And Sufism, which is a branch of Islam, has this important facet of sitting silently to connect with the inner silence and attunement to the divine. So it's the same thing, it's just different ways of putting it and different definitions of what you're connecting with, a higher power, a deeper self. In the Christian religion, we have prayer, as I mentioned. The one definition I really love is in the Quaker sect of Christianity. They call the connection with that part of us the still silent voice, connecting to the still silent voice inside. And I love that because it resonates with me, because when I meditate, that's what I feel like I'm getting to, this still silent voice, which is, by the way, full of wisdom. I cannot hear it, but I can feel it. And it is a deep knowing when I feel it. And it's powerful. So that still silent voice. The reason I'm talking about this is because we all have the ability to connect to it if we want to. If you want to connect to a deeper intuitive part of yourself, it's available to you. If someone had told me this 5, 6, 7 years ago, well, 6 or 7 years ago, I would have probably gone, I don't know if I'm going to get there. It's probably more like 8 years ago, because I've been doing this now for about 9. But I wouldn't have believed it. I wouldn't have believed it if someone was saying the same thing to me, that, through meditation, you can connect to a very high, powerful space. You see, it's easy to make this mistake that, okay, I'm sitting with the intention of connecting to this thing. That wasn't what happened with me. I was just doing it to keep myself from losing my mind, really, deal with stress and anxiety. And that was just this thing that happened along the way. This deeper intuitive part of me emerged. But if you want to make the argument, you can make the argument that, well, of course, if you sit with the intention, you're probably going to get the thing you're intending to get. And that's not a terrible argument. It's certainly a good jumping off place for further discussion about it. But you see, there's two sides of this. You've got the side where you connect to these deeper parts of ourselves, or our divine, or this other thing that we can't quite define, and with intention. And then there's the other side of it, is that this also happens without intention. There are many, many cases, hundreds, thousands, countless cases of people in great dire stress, under attack, in fear of death, that also have reported they feel this other presence there with them, this comforting presence, this knowing, this thing, this undefinable thing. And this crosses all cultures, it circles the world. goes back as far as we can tell. And it's pretty mind blowing when you think about it. You know, everybody around the world has this aspect. Every culture has some aspect of sitting silently to connect with a deeper part of ourselves. The Native American traditions have the the spirit quest, where you are taken out and left alone in nature by yourself in grueling conditions. Vision quest, and you have this vision quest where you connect with a deeper, undefinable, beautiful part of yourself. This thing that is just, right? Well, it's pretty magic. More than 100 years ago, Ernest Shackleton, who explored the Antarctic, he came back after being stranded there for 2 years with him and his whole crew, many of them dying. He almost died. And he wrote about this thing that's now known as the third man factor. And it's been called third man factor by mountaineers for a very long time, at least 100 years now. And it was about, in his greatest moments of peril, he says he never felt alone. There was always someone there with him, even when there was no one else there with him. And this has been repeated again and again and again and again by other mountaineers and other people that have been on deep, high stress situations. There's this thing we tap into, this inner voice, that when we do, it's amazing what we get from it. The benefits are huge. Do you meditate? If you do, when's the last time you meditated? Have you gotten to this point? Have you stuck with it long enough? Or maybe you have, and you're like me, where you get busy with everyday life and you stop meditating and you forget to meditate. But you don't forget how that felt when you got there, do you? I never do. But I have to force myself to slow down. See, we struggle to get there. In the ancient days, it's not surprising that they discovered this thing, this inner voice, right? And why is it not surprising? It's not surprising because when they lived, there was no internet, there was no phone, there was no cars, there was no railroad, there were no airplanes flying through the sky making all these noises. The only sounds they heard were nature sounds. You had birds, leaves in the trees, the sounds of animals. Every now and then, the loudest thing you might hear is a tree falling or a boulder falling, or maybe on a really bad day, an earthquake or a volcano. Those are rare incidents, right? I remember being camping I was backpacking in the backcountry, and I heard a tree fall overnight, and it was deafening, just because it broke the silence so much. But it really wasn't that loud of a sound. It was only loud because, in comparison to what I was listening to, it was loud. It didn't come close to me being near a passing train here in town. That's much louder. But we're so overwhelmed with the sounds that are in our world now that it's hard to quiet our minds. Back then, they were closer to that target. They were already nearly there. They were already so quieted that they just had to take a couple steps that way to get there. We are so far away from it that to get there, we have to really work hard to get to that silent place. And when we do, it's well worth the journey. But we do have to work harder. We have to make space for it. And it's possible. People in New York City meditate in these apartments, above these busy streets in this loud city. I meditate over the sound of train noises and whatever else. But it only comes with practice. And what happens is that we get there. When we get there, it's such a beautiful payoff. If you don't meditate, I'm going to share some links for you down below in the show notes. Free links, just some good videos to start with, an app that I like, that I used when I started, maybe even a link to one or two of my favorite meditations on that app, if it'll let me do that. Mozart said the music is not in the notes, but in the silence between them. The music is not in the notes, it's in the silence in between them. Listen for that space between the notes. Meditate, find the silence between the notes. And if you do, you're going to find magic. I'll see you on the next video.